As we continue the month of May, as I said, we continue to focus on the topic of emotions. And today, specifically, I want to talk about the emotion of fear. And my talk title is On the Other Side of Fear. What's on the other side of fear? Last week, Maria Shriver, the famous journalist and former First Lady of California, she gave the commencement address at the University of Michigan. And her speech was all about fear. And I found her experience and her words to be very interesting because, quite frankly, I had to talk about fear today, right? So right off the bat, I want to say, she admitted that she was afraid to give the speech when she was first asked to give the speech. She said she didn't want to embarrass her sons. She didn't think she had anything valuable to say. She actually thought the graduates would be disappointed because there wasn't a bigger name person on the podium, and she gave several examples of who they might have preferred. But all these fears just stopped her in her tracks. But after thinking about it longer, and she actually talked to her sons, who are Michigan students, who thought she was crazy to be afraid of this, she called the university president back and said she would face her fears and agreed to do the talk anyway. She said she's a big believer in facing her fears head on. And then she said that by doing so, she found her own courage and bravery. She discovered her truth, and moving through her fears is how she discovered who she really was. Those are her words. She went on to list all the things in her life that she had been afraid to do. And that list included all the things that we would name about knowing about Maria Shriver. She was afraid to be a journalist. She was afraid of being a Democrat serving in a Republican administration in California. She was afraid to get married. She thought it was a mistake. She was afraid to have children. She was afraid she was going to mess her kids up along the way. She was afraid of leaving that marriage and forging a path for herself, which she has done in this later part of her life. She told the graduates that fear shows up at every single stage of your life. And then she said this. She said, not pushing through your fear, not pushing through that which scares you will leave you feeling like you're not brave. It will leave you with an unrealized, unfulfilled version of yourself. And believe me, graduates, that is something to fear. She went on to explain that each one of us knows exactly who we are, and out of fear, we hide. Fear and uncertainty are this illusion, and so is the belief that you are small and the idea that someone else knows what could be best for you. She pointed out the fears that we feel are like windows into our own bravery. And we will encounter those windows all along the way of our life. And she said this, see your fear as your great teacher and your lifelong companion instead of your enemy. I constantly teach around here that you are the only person you will live your whole life with. You're the only person who knows best how to live as you. And it's critical that you know yourself well. And a big part of knowing yourself well is knowing what you fear, what scares you, what keeps you hiding. Because on the other side of fear is you. Your authentic self, your best expression is on the other side of fear. Maria Shriver warned us that if we don't push through our fears, what'd she say? She said we would be stuck with an unrealized and unfulfilled version of ourselves. So when we push through our fears, we become more realized and more fulfilled. If you're like most people at the end of your life, you're going to look back at your life's biggest moments and realize that you too were afraid at the time they were unfolding. It's just part of the purpose of fear. Part of the purpose of fear is to alert you that something big and important and meaningful is unfolding. Work through the fear and big things await. Let the fear stop you, and your life becomes this small cage of safety and security and monotony, for that matter. So how do we push through our fears? What do we turn to? We turn to our faith. We turn to therapy. We turn to spending time alone and meditating and journaling and exploring what our fears are really about. And through these methods and many, many more, we grow stronger and we work out what scares us. Here's the deal. We're all going to have fear and anxiety, mostly about change, mostly about the unknown, right? And at times of fear, we have a very big choice to make. Are we going to empower the fear and let it diminish our life? Or are we going to do everything possible to step beyond the fear? Everything possible. Our faith tells us that everything we need to navigate this life is already within us. It was born into us. It's who we are. There's nothing, no quality that anyone else has that's not inside of you. You know, that quality that you so desire, that you see in someone else, may be latent in you. It may be undeveloped or untested or unexplored, but it's right there, right inside your emotional heart, right inside the magic suit, right inside your mind. Everything you need is there. So don't let your fear stop you from going inside to find it. Maria Shriver also said the best way to access everything is inside you is to do everything that you're afraid of. To be afraid is to be human, alive, and aware. Fear is more about keeping you small than keeping you safe. Let me say that again. Fear is more about keeping you small than keeping you safe. Because when you speak up and you talk about your fears to others, but also admit them to yourself, right? Your fears can dissolve, and they will dissolve. The truth is that when the light of awareness is shined onto fear, it shrinks, and its power to hold you back is dissipated. But you have to be ready to not be held back. Bravery is so necessary as you move through your life. When you face your fears with bravery, you'll discover the things that make you feel most alive. We do not fear things that don't matter. We fear the things that do matter, the things that call to us and inspire us, the things that we long for and crave in our experiences. Those are the things that when we get afraid. You know, we were talking about in class this week that all of us have this urge inside of us to want more out of life. We crave more freedom, more abundance, more love, more friendship, more variety, more experiences. But too many of us sit in the life that we have already created, afraid to make changes, especially big changes. We've invested so much time and money and effort into creating our life as it is, and when we wake up and we realize we're not satisfied in some way, we get afraid of what it will take to change. We get afraid of what it will take to change. Am I right? Right? You know, if we look around that wheel of life that we've introduced this year and all the different subjects we're going to explore, I guarantee you, if you go around that circle, you'll find your fears lurking in plain sight. You know, maybe you're afraid of exploring your inner life because you don't want to face everything about what you think about and what you believe. You know, maybe you're afraid of the experience of play. We talked about play, and everybody else seems to know how to play, and I'm afraid I don't know how to play like everybody else. You know, maybe you fear your creative power because you don't really know, can't figure out how to use it or what you want to use it for. And perhaps you're afraid of your body and have health concerns that you just don't want to talk about. Or maybe your body is asking you to make changes that you're afraid to make. Perhaps love has proven to be scary and you don't want to face doing that again. And around the wheel we could go, touching every major part of living. All the big stuff, all the meaningful stuff, all the scary stuff is on that wheel. And the underlying fear is that there's something wrong with me. Look where I am right now. There's got to be something wrong with me, you may be thinking. We're afraid that we don't have what it takes, that we'll be rejected or thwarted in our efforts if we try to change, that we can't make our ideas manifest, and that our dreams are empty, that we will fail. Am I hitting close to home? But let's talk about failure for a second and the fear of failure. Michelle Obama said this: failure is a feeling long before it becomes an actual result. It's vulnerability that breeds with self-doubt and then is escalated, often deliberately, by fear. You know, failure is just a label that we human beings put on experiences that don't turn out the way we expected. You know, we sit in this in the unexpected result, and we doubt ourselves and we paralyze ourselves in the process. Fear is that base emotion, and out of it, what is it? What are some of the other flavors of it? Doubt, worry, anxiety, worthlessness, dread, insecurity, jealousy, resentment, and several other, spices on our emotional spice rack. They're made out of fear. But on the other side of fear are all the things you desire in every part of your life. On the other side of fear is love. On the other side of fear is spiritual fulfillment and human life fulfillment. Bottom line, on the other side of fear is what y'all said, faith. Faith is the mental equivalent of fear on the opposite side of the continuum. So if everything's on a continuum, faith is at this end and fear is at this end. Having faith does not mean the absence of fear. It means that we know who we really are and how life works. And this is a benevolent universe that we live in. That's the spiritual truth. Faith is holding on to that. Ernest Holmes said, from time immemorial, that means forever, it has been almost instinctive for man, when confronted with fear, to turn to what he has considered a power greater than himself. What he's saying is that even centuries ago, when human beings have been afraid, they've turned their eyes upward or their eyes inward, however they understand the power of all life to exist and how they understand how to access it. They turn to God. Remember the old saying, there are no atheists in the foxhole, right? There are no atheists in this time of fear, is what Ernest Holmes is saying. When life gets scary, human beings turn to the overall power of life itself. And as we mature spiritually, our fears begin to diminish and our faith begins to grow. When we live from a spiritual perspective, we begin to fully realize that everything that is happening is spirit, like Heather read about. Every person we are encountering is a God being in form. Nothing can happen in our lives that is not part of our evolutionary process, our healing process, our growing process. Nothing can happen. And we have within us everything necessary to navigate this moment right now. All the time, every time. You know, faith has us remember that this too shall pass. And we turn our focus onto what we want next, what we want to experience next, and we release our attachment to this moment. We look beyond the fear to the bravery that is ours as a spiritual being living by faith. We look for the new choice and refuse to be stopped in this moment by a thought that we can change. So since today is Mother's Day, I want to see if I can tie in the concept of mothering and the topic of fear. I want to share 2 mothering experiences where my faith has been tempered by my fears. So if you've been around here and you know a little bit about my daughter Kelsey, she was born with a lot of medical fragilities. And I, at that point, young in my life, I was not in relationship with an inner divine power or any kind of power for that matter. At the time, I actually thought that religion was not for me and that God was just kind of a concept from my childhood. And I had to wake up from that because my daughter was struggling to stay alive. So on her 3rd day, she experienced this really dangerous blood clot, and the doctors asked me to sign a DNR. You know what a DNR is? Do not resuscitate. So she's 3 days old. And the most powerful fear that I've ever experienced in my life kind of descended upon my very being. I was afraid that my deepest dream of my life to be a mom was going to end, and my mothering was going to be over, and my precious baby would never even get to come home with me, right? And it was on that day that I was awakened to the bigger truth that even borrowed faith was powerful. So Kelsey was in ICU, and we were allowed, because I signed the DNR, we were allowed to have our friends come in and basically say goodbye to her. But as they visited, they brought their faith into the room for me. I didn't have any. They brought it in. Prayers were whispered and spoken out loud and silently. Her little head was anointed with oil. There were little sacred objects left around on her bed. All these people knew for me that no matter what the outcome was, I was in the right place, Kelsey was going to be in the right place, and all of us involved had something bigger unfolding, much holier than we could ever understand. I learned so much about fear and faith in my daughter's young childhood. And that day, I looked my gravest fear in the eye, and I kept moving forward, accepting whatever happened. Obviously, she lived. Obviously. But all the medical trauma of her youngest days continues to impact her. She's 27 now. She's trying to navigate adulthood with all of the challenges, right? And on Monday, this past Monday, I got one of the calls that mothers never want to get. Mom, I got let go. And I could hear the anguish in her words and the fear in her tearful words. I could feel her fear, but I could feel my own in my own body, right? Immediately, I remembered all the things I know and teach. This is a spiritual experience and a human experience. I don't have to understand what's going on. I just know that on some level, this is happening for everyone involved. And that faith muscle was so strong after having been tested and used over and over again for 27 years. I dropped into nurturing mother mode, and I said, sweetie, go home, pack a bag, come to my house for a few days, and just let me hug you, right? Now, don't get me wrong. I hung up that phone, Terry will tell you. I hung up the phone and I burst into my own tears. And they were tears of empathy and concern over the impact this experience might have on her self-esteem and her confidence. But they were not tears of fear. They were not tears of fear. I spent this entire week mothering her to see this as an opportunity to grow, to learn more about her strengths and her opportunities, to choose again, to remember how loved she is. I know the weeks ahead are going to be challenging, aren't they? We've all been through this experience, but I also know that this is a normal human experience, and she gets to choose between fear and will it paralyze her and everything that's possible on the other side of this experience. She gets to choose. I'll keep you posted. And I appreciate in advance all the prayers. Come on, let's pray for Kelsey. But here's the deal. She's going to have to dig deep within herself to do everything possible to not let fear stop her in her tracks. She's going to have to be willing to see her therapist. She's possibly going to have to change medication to help her brain process through this fog of anxiety. She's going to have to look beyond the choices that have brought her to this place and see if she can try new things. And these are the same things that all of us have to do when fear stops us in our tracks, if we're going to be able to move beyond our fears and disappointments. And I share these mothering stories today for all of us. You know, let's remember that whether we're mothers or not, we all have a mother. And some of us have a few people with whom we have these mother-type relationships. We talked about that in Sacred Cup this morning. And all of us have the opportunity to give mothering energy in the face of fear. And all of us have the opportunity to receive mothering energy when we're facing something scary. If not from another human being, then, or our animals for that matter, then from spirit within, from life itself. That's our opportunity. When we see another person in fear, it's important that we don't allow it to trigger our own fear of inadequacy and shut down. It's a moment calling us to offer the example of faith, that nurturing comfort, the encouragement, empathy, the knowing that on the other side of this scary thing is something big and important. Never forget that we are all one. We are all on the road to fulfilling an urge inside of us to be bigger and happier. And I want to close with a reading, and I'm going to try to say this name, Utmatato El Elekniknik, something like that. Sorry, whoever you are. Perhaps you've heard it before, but if not, it's perfect for this day. In a mother's womb, there were two babies. And one asked the other, "Do you believe in life after delivery?" And the other replied, "Why, of course. There has to be something after delivery. Maybe we're here to prepare ourselves for what will come later." "Nonsense," said the first. "There is no life after delivery. What kind of life would that be?" And the second one said, "I don't know, but there will be more light than here. Maybe we will walk with our legs and eat from our mouths. Maybe we will have other senses that we can't understand now." And the first replied, "That is absurd. Walking is impossible, and eating with our mouths ridiculous. The umbilical cord supplies nutrition and everything we need. But the umbilical cord is so short, life after delivery is to be logically excluded." The second insisted, "Well, I think there is something, and maybe it's different than it is here. Maybe we won't need this physical cord anymore." And the first replied, "Nonsense. And moreover, if there is life, then why has no one ever come back from there? Delivery is the end of life, and in the after delivery there is nothing but darkness and silence and oblivion. It takes us nowhere." "Well, I don't know," said the second, "but certainly we will meet Mother, and she will take care of us." And the first replied, "Mother? You actually believe in Mother? That's laughable. If Mother exists, then where is she now?" And the second said, "She's all around us. We are surrounded by her. We are of her. It is in her that we live. Without her, this world would not and could not exist." Said the first, "Well, I don't see her, so it is only logical that she doesn't exist." To which the second replied, "Sometimes, when you're in silence and you focus and you really listen, you can perceive her presence and you can hear her loving voice calling down from above." Let us pray. Mother, Father God, universal power of life, it is present in this place, in each one of us, around each one of us, living as each one of us. It is the source of all good. It is love. And when I remember that I am part of that power of love, when I remember that life is good, when I remember that I am a spiritual being having all these human experiences, I remember that I label everything with my human mind. And today I choose to know that everything happening in my life is for me. I choose to rise above my fears and let the inner divine voice that's within me just guide me to whatever I need in that moment. I know that for myself, and I know that for anyone hearing this prayer. Today I'm thankful. I'm thankful for my mother and for the mothering souls that each one of us has encountered on our journey. I know great blessings for any and all who mother, in whatever circumstances we are in. I'm thankful for the nurturing I have received, the love I have been shown, the encouragement that has come my way throughout my life years. And I know that it is the love of the universe flowing through these people on my path that have given those things to me, and I am grateful. I know that today my eyes are open and your eyes are open to see every mother on my path and recognize the God in them. Today I choose fearlessness, and I choose that on behalf of all of us. And so it is. Happy Mother's Day.